Hi everybody, and thank you so much, Carmen, for taking us through the first half of module supported communication. Now I will take us through the second half of this module and then on to module 3, which is practical support. So the second half of this module, supported communication in everyday interactions, it starts off by looking at listening. And before I share my screen and go through the showing my screen now, second half of that module with you, I would like to take a minute to think about listening. Why is it that we have listed listening as an essential skill here for COVID-19 responders? What is so important about it? So I'm going to ask you to help me answer this question. So those who are in an audience right now, I would like you, and also those who are watching this afterwards, I would like you to think of a time when you felt listened to. Perhaps you were a little bit stressed, and how did you feel afterwards? So those in our audience now can write your answers in Mentimeter. And for those of you who are watching this afterwards, perhaps you can have a think and write down any answers that you have. Okay, so we have some answers coming through. Relieved, can think more clearly. Yeah, absolutely. So felt less tense, felt calm, felt content afterwards, felt listened to. Yeah, I think that these are all very common answers, and lots of people feel this way afterwards. Happier. So looking at these words now, and perhaps those of you who are watching this afterwards, you have some other ones to add to this list. But these words in themselves, they really highlight why it is that this skill of listening is so important. You can see that just by doing something relatively simple, such as listening, you can help somebody to feel relieved, calm, content, listening, less tense and happier. So yes, I really see listening as such a superpower because of this reason. You can make such a difference through doing something which may seem relatively straightforward or simple. So now what I will do, now we've answered our question as to why it's so important, I will go back to the guide. And we start off here where Carmen left off. So this is the top of page 10. So here we start off by looking at listening in more detail. And this first bit, it looks at the basic skills of listening. So this is thinking about not giving advice, giving the person your undivided attention, truly hearing their concerns, and listening with care and showing respect and empathy. And as we go through the guide, you'll see there's a case study here which demonstrates how these skills can be used. And I'm just going to keep going down. And here we land on this skill at the top of page 11, looking at active listening. So you may or may not have heard already of active listening. What is active listening? It is a technique which uses listening consciously to support others. So it's really using the skill of listening to help other people to feel all those things we just had in that word cloud. So to feel calmer, less tense. And it's very consciously using this skill. And it's a great technique. I love active listening. It's something which can be used at any time with anybody. And now, as you're seeing this, you might think to yourself, well, I listen to people every day, all the time, in everyday interactions. But how often when we are listening to people are we thinking about other things, our next task for the day, our shopping list? So this skill of active listening is really clearing your mind and not doing that, but really paying attention to what that person is saying. So this is actually our first step here of active listening. It's to listen attentively. So really trying to understand the person's point of view, their feelings, and letting them talk. And then the next step of active listening is showing that person that you have heard what they have said. So to show that person you have heard, you can do things such as repeating messages and keywords that they have said. You can ask for clarification if you do not understand. And then you can also summarize at the end what you've understood, just to make sure what you've understood is correct. So to demonstrate these skills, we are going to try doing a little bit of a role play here with Ernest. I'll stop showing my screen. So what I would like you to do is Ernest and myself are going to do a role play, and I want you, if you're in the audience, to be writing in the chat any skills of active listening you see. And if you are watching this afterwards, just think to yourself or write down any skills that you see. Okay, Ernest, are we ready?
Yes.
Fantastic. So Ernest, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm a bit tired. I'm a bit tired, and these past days we have a lot of things to do in our office, and many deadlines with reports. I am not able to meet the deadlines, and I couldn't sleep well these past days, and I feel tired. I feel very tired. Body pain everywhere. Yeah, this is how I feel.
Yeah, it sounds as if you've had lots of deadlines, you're saying, and you're feeling very tired at the moment because there's been lots of reporting and things going on over the last couple of days.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll just pause there. And Ernest, before we go and look at the comments in the chat, I want to see, how was that experience for you?
Yes, I can see the nodding parts. Yes, showing concern. Face expression summarizing, yes, that is true.
And how did you feel afterwards?
I felt listened to. That is first things. You see, you can see the eye contact and the fact that you are reacting to all the things I was feeling about. So I feel listened to, and I feel also relieved at some point.
Fantastic, thank you. So you can see, even in a relatively, very short interaction like that one there, you can really make a difference to how someone feels. So now I will just go to the chat and see what our audience here picked up on. So I see, yep, so nodding, yep, that was one of the techniques I used. Showing concern, yep. Facial expression, summarizing, and paying full attention to what was being said there. So exactly all those techniques were coming out in that very short interaction. Great, so thank you for that, Ernest. I will now go back to the guide. So that brings us to the end of that module 2, which is supportive communication in everyday interactions. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, Kita, I think you've raised a hand. Yes, please.
Yes, thank you. I was just wondering, now, since the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of people have been providing support remotely, either online or over the phone. So I'm wondering if there are anything specifics that we should think of, or any recommendations of how to adapt to this kind of support.
Thank you. I think that's a really important question, and a question which lots of people will be thinking about during these times. I know a lot of people have adapted their work through telephone or through online messaging systems or video chats like this. So it's a very important question. So actually in our guide, we do have a section which I skipped over on what you can do to adapt your communication over the phone. So at the bottom of page 10, you'll see here it's suggestions such as making sure you clarify any miscommunications, allowing for pauses, and making those verbal communications more obvious. So lots of mm-hms and nodding your head, and then making helpful comments to normalize silence. So being okay with sitting with silence, and then also minimizing disruptions. But there are some more there you can have a look at in your own time at the bottom of page 10. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, so now what we will do is we'll move on to the next module, which is offering practical support. Go down. So you'll see it's just here, and it starts on page 12. So offering practical support covers page 12 and 13 of this module. So this guide talks about offering practical support in 3 different ways, but before we go on to them, I want to just go back to Mentimeter again, and I want to think about, why is it that practical support is so important in this pandemic for supporting the well-being of others? And again, I'm going to ask for your help in answering this question. Let's go on to the next one. So before we think about why it's so important, I really want to consider what practical support have people in your community or work needed during COVID-19. So again, if you're in the audience here, go to Mentabeta and put your answers in. Or if you're watching this afterwards, then just think to yourself, what practical support have people needed during your work? Basic needs support. Fantastic. Information. Yeah, particularly during this pandemic, I think information is a big thing, and misinformation as well. Lots of misinformation being spread on social media. Food support. Yep, accurate information, absolutely. And access to food is a big one as well. Yep, another basic needs are so important, absolutely. PPE, shelter, food, psychological first aid, information. So we can really see there's a lot of different practical needs that people are needing during COVID-19. And why is it that addressing these needs is so important for well-being? Well, I suppose if you think about it, if you do not have your basic needs met, if you do not have access to accurate information or PPE, then it's going to cause people lots of stress. So this is really a way to support the well-being of those that you work with, is to try and address these practical needs that they have. So I will now go back to the guide. Right, so in this guide, as I already said, we cover 3 different ways in which you can support people through offering practical support. And the first one looks at how you can offer information or basic items yourself. The second one is thinking about what to do when you cannot offer those yourself, so referring to other organizations. And then the third one is thinking about how you can help others to help themselves. So to begin with, we'll just go through this bit here on offering information or basic items yourself. So this is looking at providing information or providing basic items or service. So the type of support that you offer will likely depend on your role, your resources, and also what the needs are of the person who is accessing your support. So you might be in a position to be able to provide information or basic items or services, in which case, fantastic, that's excellent. And it's definitely should go ahead and do that. For example, during the lockdown we had in Switzerland, my elderly neighbor was unable to go and do her own shopping. So as part of our daily shopping, we would also do shopping for her as well. And that was something very small for us, but it made a very big difference on her well-being and helped her feel supported during the pandemic. So the next section is thinking about linking others to other people who are providing practical support. And this is something which is important to do if you are not able to provide the support yourself. So this is very important to know your own limitations and understand what you can offer as part of your role. And with this, it's also really helpful to make sure you have a list of all the organizations in your area who are offering different types of practical support. And then the next bit is thinking about how to help others to help themselves. And this is my favorite section. I think because this is really giving the power back to that person that you are helping. So if you're able to support the other person to help themselves, they will feel more independent. They will feel like they have more control over their lives. And next time they have a problem, it's possible that they might think through themselves how to manage it first before coming back to you. So this may also free up some of your time too. And we have here a method to support people to manage their own problems. It's called Stop, Think, Go. And just very briefly, this method starts off with supporting the person to prioritize just one problem to work out how to manage. So people might come to you with multiple different problems. And so helping them to think about what is the most important and one that they can do something about. And those circles of control that Carmen showed to you can be used as well in this. And then the next stage is thinking. So supporting the person to really think as many ways as possible to manage their problem. And these don't have to be sensible solutions, they can be any solutions whatsoever. And then the next step is go. So supporting the person to find one way to manage the problem and to try it out. So picking from that list of solutions they had in the second phase of think. And then in the guide here, we have a quick case study to show how it can be put into action. Great, so we have covered the second module now, which was offering practical support and thinking about those 3 different ways in which support can be offered. Does anybody have any questions? Ooh, I think I see a hand raised there. Geeta, do you want to go?
Yeah, thank you. I was just wondering about the stop, think, go method. So what if someone does not think of any solutions, and then just thinking about that you said you're not supposed to give advice. So then how do you solve that issue?
Yes, and thank you for this. This is a very good question again, and something which might really happen when you are trying this method out. It is possible that someone could be feeling so hopeless that they really are saying they cannot think of any solutions to their problem. And I will just share the guide again. So my answer to this is just be creative. Be as creative as you can, and do what you can to help them to think of other things or to find ways to think of different solutions. And this could be through asking their friends or family. It could be through, if you have a phone with access to internet, you could Google it. You can ask other people who are nearby if they've had similar problems and what they've done. So there's a couple of questions here as well, which can be asked to support them to think as well. But yeah, get as creative as you possibly can for this stage. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It makes a lot of sense. I was also wondering about the linking to support. So how is that considered different from giving advice when you're linking someone to somewhere else for support?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, I think this is another important question as well, to think about that linking stage. And I think with the linking, you can really, I suppose the thing about giving advice is it's kind of you telling them what to do. Like in this whole problem management process or providing practical support, if you can, it's helpful to try and give the power and the control back to that person. So with the referring, you can, or linking to other organizations, you can give them the list of different organizations and ask them to be linking themselves to them. And then always make sure to follow up as well. So, and you can also ask them how they want the process to happen. You can give them the control that way. So if they don't have access to a phone, they may prefer for you to make the referral there and then with them. But I think giving them the control of how that process is done as well can help. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so now we have covered modules 2 and 3, and I'm just going to hand over to our colleague Brian to do the rest of the modules.